and thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Carol Jenkins. The program is Black America, and today we're looking at the world of book publishing and book awards. And with us today to explain all of this to us is Lisa Lucas, the new executive director of the National Book Foundation, which every year gives out the National Book Awards, the most prestigious, some would say the gold standard award in literature. And thank you so much, Lisa. Do you agree it's the gold standard? You're going to start trouble in
I'm
the
biased, but I
world?
certainly do think that our award
is the gold.
Is the gold standard.
Yeah, because the question is always in literature, who's won the National Book Award? And if you haven't, you're somehow, even if you've won the Nobel, like Toni Morrison, it's still crazy if you haven't won that award.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's a really important prize. It's really propelled a lot of careers and really honored people who've been doing incredible work in American letters for years and years. We're 67 years old this year. And so I think the history of the awards really helps people to feel the import of receiving one or being a finalist or longlister for that award. So
right.
I definitely.
So I introduced you as the new executive director. You're the third in the whole history, the 50 years that they've been giving out the awards.
I am.
So that must have been a huge tenure for a couple of guys.
Yeah, so the awards are 67 years old, but we became a nonprofit in the late 80s. So that's when the foundation was formed, which is the organization that awards the National Book Award. And so there have been 3 executive directors of that National Book Foundation, although the award was given in the years preceding that.
Yes, so you're the first woman.
Yes.
And the first
African American
to hold that position. And I've seen you interviewed, and you always said that you really didn't go after that job. You were recommending other people, and somebody said, "Hey, what about you?"
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that process.
So when you have a recruiter who's looking for somebody to fill, a high-level nonprofit position, they often will canvass the community and see who pops up. They'll speak to people and say, "Who do you think would be good for this job?" Do a survey of what the organization needs based on constituents. And they talked to me, and I said, "You should talk to this person and this person and this person. They'd be great, but I think that you need this and that and the other thing." And I said, "Well, I really wish I were a little bit older because I would love to do this." And the woman that I was speaking to said, "Well, what about you?"
And then so I have a feeling a little bit younger was what they were looking for. A little more diverse was something they may have been looking for too.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they were looking for the right person to do it. I think they were looking for a lot of energy. I think they were looking for a wider audience. I think they were looking for a bigger presence for the awards. And then I think they were also looking for somebody who was a strong programs administrator. So I think I ticked those boxes, and then it was almost like this is a bonus.
Especially when you said you love to raise money. That they were looking for a fundraiser to expand their presence in the world. So you may be the only person I've met recently who says that, "I love to raise money."
Well, but you have to think about it in terms of what the money does, right? So raising money itself is a tricky and challenging proposition, and it's always really awkward when at a certain point you have to say, "So, would you be interested in giving us X, Y, and Z number of dollars?" But for me, it directly translates into the work that you can do. And I've always worked in service to audiences, to young filmmakers.
At Tribeca and Sundance.
Indeed. And so I feel like, for me, it's always been connected to the kind of work and the scale of the work and the impact you can have on the constituents that you work with. So I love fundraising because I know that no matter how hard it is, it really has a meaning for whoever you're supporting through your work. And I try to be thoughtful about the kind of work that I select,
Sure. Well, you're so persuasive, I mean, I'm ready to write the check right now for you. We always ask our guests to place themselves in Black America, to sort of, say, where are you from? What were your early influences? And what was that for you?
Sure. Well, I grew up in a New Jersey suburb, Teaneck, which was actually one of the most diverse. I feel like there was some survey that I read when I was in high school that was like one of the most diverse towns in America. And so I grew up in kind of a Benetton ad. I mean, obviously that's not real, but it was, but it was this really, this community that was really...
For those who may not know the reference for Benetton ad, very stylish, diverse, upscale, right?
Well, it was a solidly middle and working class town.
Right.
But it really did feel like I grew up and had friends who were Indian, who were Jewish, who were Black, and that really, I think, defined my place in Black America, right? I understood myself as an equal participant, as everyone to be an equal participant. So I think that Teaneck did that work for a lot of young people who grew up there in the 80s and 90s.
And your folks, what did they do?
My mom is from Chicago, and she worked in advertising. She actually worked at a black ad agency for many years. And my father is a guitar player who was a jazz guitar player and then became a record producer and songwriter.
Wow. And so I know you went to the University of Chicago and you're a third generation?
Mm-hmm. My grandmother and my mother all went to University of Chicago, to the college.
And what did you major in to find yourself in this world of film and literature and all of that? Tell me you majored in chemistry or something.
Shockingly, I majored in English literature.
But unlike most people who major in English literature, you found wonderful jobs.
Mm-hmm. It's like, I never thought, I had never worked in publishing or in literature until, formally 2012. And so all these years I've been dipping around, working in theater, working in film. At some point I worked in television, and it was always sort of like, well, I guess my major didn't really matter. And then all of a sudden, shockingly, it is like directly related to what I do.
And you came to the foundation from Guernica, which was a wonderful but online literary publication, literary and action. How do you describe
it's an
that?
online. We called it an online magazine of art and politics.
Art and politics, right? And I looked at one of the recent special editions or issues that you did was the class issue, which was really, really heavy duty. Margot Jefferson's Negro Land was excerpted then, and as you were describing, before anybody else discovered it. Right?
Well, I mean, Margot has been working for some time, and certainly the world had discovered her, but it was an early version of what became Negro Land, and so we were really thrilled to have it and to know that the memoir was coming and to really be able to share some of that. And then it was actually from that Guernica piece, it ended up being in Best American Essays the following year, so we were really thrilled to have it.
Right. So all of that building up to your coming to the foundation. People want to know, how exactly does that work? I did read that the judges already have the books, right? How many submissions did you get?
We got over 1,500 submissions.
1,500. And so in each category, I assume that each judge in each category only gets so many books, but that could be 200 or 300?
It can be upwards of 500.
500 books that they have to read between now and September?
Yeah, we'll find out. We'll get a phone call from them on September 6th and get some information about what our long list is going to look like.
And then you announce a long list of all of the people who were. And when does that happen?
Mid-September.
Mid-September.
And then in October.
Yes, is your
finalist.
Finalist. Now that's the big, so there's a big gathering of because already if you're a finalist then.
Yeah, and long listers. I mean, we really try to celebrate. I mean, we're a multi-purpose organization. So we obviously administer the National Book Awards, but we're also the National Book Foundation, and our mission is to celebrate and create places for American literature to be important. And so part of the reason that we do a long list, and part of the reason we do finalists, and we announce that list as we drive along the road to the National Book Award, is to celebrate all of these writers and to celebrate literature. Like, my hope is that everybody starts reading in mid-September alongside all of us as we get excited and wonder who's going to win and root for our favorites and just wait for November 16th.
Right, when the big gala and the announcement. So now I'm going to try to read in all of this time, 67 years now. The number of Black writers who've won awards is, I suppose we're up to 9, as you and I in the green room were, making sure that we had everybody. It never got any higher than 9. So let's go through that list. The very first, and this is quite something, back in 1953, so only 3 years into the awards legacy of the foundation. Well, I guess the foundation didn't exist yet.
Right, but the National Book Awards.
There'll be the award. Ralph Ellison in 1953, he won for The Invisible Man. Pay attention to these books, because if you haven't read them, this is what you have to read this summer before you get to the other submissions. Alice Walker won in 1983 for The Color Purple. Charles Johnson in 1990 for Middle Passage. Jesmyn Ward, one of my favorite all-time writers, won in 2011 for Salvage the Bones, and James McBride in 2013 for The Good Lord Bird. And now there was a special class. Gloria Naylor won in 1983 for the first work of fiction category. That's something that you don't really do anymore, but that happened in 1983, and that was for The Women of Brewster Place. Now, in poetry, Lucille Clifton, also a legend, won in 2000 for Blessing the Boats. And this last year, it was The Voyage of the Sable Venus by Robin Costa Lewis. And Nikki Finney won for Head Off and Split. In 2014, Jacqueline Woodson was the first Black writer to win in the Writing for Young People category for Brown Girl Dreaming. And this year, Ta-Nehisi Coates was the first winner in the nonfiction category for his Between the World and Me. And he gave a very emotional acceptance speech and dedicated to a friend assumed to be a criminal and killed. Let's take a listen to that.
Well, I won't tell you the entire story because that's why we wrote the book. But Prince Jones was killed because he was mistaken for a criminal. And Prince Jones was mistaken for a criminal because at the heart of our country is the notion that we are okay with the presumption that Black people somehow have an angle, somehow have a predisposition towards criminality. We're in this moment where, folks are recording on their phones. And every day, you cut on the TV and you see some sort of violence being directed at Black people. You see a young girl being flipped out of a chair and dragged across a floor in a school. You see somebody being choked to death. You see somebody reaching for their license and being shot over and over and over again, and it keeps happening. I have waited for 15 years for this moment because when Prince Jones died, there were no cameras. There was nobody else looking. The officer that killed him was not prosecuted. He wasn't even disciplined by the police force. He was sent back out into the streets to work as though nothing happened, as though Prince Jones's life did not matter at all. I'm a Black man in America. I can't punish that officer. Between the World and Me comes out of that place. I can't secure the safety of my son. I can't go home and tell him at night that, it's going to be okay. You definitely will not end up like Prince Jones. I just don't have that right. I just don't have that power. But what I do have the power to do is to say, you won't enroll me in this lie. You won't make me part of it. And that was
Really, really moving. And you were there.
It was.
So this is just as you were about to start, and did you...
I had no idea that I would be working at the National Book Foundation when I sat and watched that speech.
Really?
No.
Really? And so the next thing you know, you're in charge of, well, I don't want to say making sure that the process is more diverse and that there are more Ta-Nehisi Coates like writers who can get recognized for the work that they do. Do you feel that that's part of your mission, or just generally?
I think the foundation has actually done a really tremendous job in the past decade under Harold Augenbrom's direction in making sure that there were diverse judges and making sure that the work that the foundation was doing was committed to reflecting what American literature looked like on the judging side and on the awards side. I think what my job is to make sure that we're connecting this work to readers that look like what America looks like, that I'm speaking to an audience that is bigger and broader and more colorful than the audience that lots of literature currently enjoys. I think that it's really important to make sure that we're going into communities and doing outreach around these books and making sure that these books are a part of the literary landscape of young people in different regions, outside of New York. I think that publishing tends to be really New York centric, and a lot of the media tends to be focused here. We're the National Book Foundation, and I made a joke that we're not the Inside Baseball Foundation, but it's I think making sure that we're actually making sure that that book, which I think is a profoundly important book that I think was rightfully celebrated on our stage, we have to make sure that that book gets into the hands of people who will benefit from reading it. He makes that powerful statement about, you will not enroll me in the lie. And I think that part of that is writing it down, saying what the truth of his experience was. putting it into book form, putting it in something that can be shared and communicated and understood and instructive. And I think that making sure that that book is used that way, that just the simple, act of making sure that that book gets into the hand of a young person who needs to understand from whatever side of the issue that they're coming from, that happens. That's the work that I can do.
And how can you do that? Because we're talking about getting books to children of all nationalities, ethnicities. There have to be the books, first of all.
Right.
And there's a huge shortage of that kind of book. And so, so you're distributing the books that already exist that have diverse characters and all kinds to schools, to kids. Sure. You're getting them out there. But how do you then influence the process of making sure that more are written, more are published, and therefore the library that's available to our children is more wider in scope?
I think access creates desire. If you find things that you love and that you respond to and that you realize are for you, then it creates demand. It creates more tweeting about we need diverse books. It creates more awareness of what there is an absence of. And I think that the more people you have fighting that fight to say we need young people that look like us in our books for children, we need more books that tell our truth, that assume us to be a reader, the more you'll see that work.
So, but the publishing industry is just shot through with lack of diversity. The big Publishers Weekly analysis that shows that 89% of the people who are working in the industry are non-diverse. That blacks participate on a 4% level.
Right.
But when you go to things like editors and agents and decision makers, it could be 1%.
Sure.
Or zero in some cases. Does the foundation have a mission to go in that direction too, to influence opening up an industry to all people?
I think that's not our specific mission. That's not the work that we specifically do. I think that, one of my experiences of getting this job and having a fairly high profile job in publishing that speaks to publishers, that speaks to editors, that speaks to agents, is to continually be a reminder that there are people that look like me that work in this community, that are interested in working in this community, and that we have to continue to develop that community and to provide the invitation to sit at the table. I think for me, I've always had mentors, and I think that it's been really important, just on Twitter even,
right.
To talk to younger people and to acknowledge younger people who see me and say, oh, if she's doing that, then I can do that. And it's true. I think that kind of modeling is huge. At Tribeca, one of the things that we used to do was to make sure that young people, even if it was just for an afternoon, would come see a film, and we made sure that they had an experience seeing a filmmaker who might have had an experience much like their own. And I think sometimes seeing that is huge. I think that people seeing that video of Ta-Nehisi is important, because you can see your own reality reflected back to you in an art form that you might not have felt like you were a part of. And so that's our work. There's a lot of work to be done, and there are a lot of organizations that are going to have to do the work.
Right. Now, we don't want to put it all on your shoulders, but since you're such at the top of this whole chain of wonderful work, you have one of the judges this year is is her name Ellen O, who heads up We Need More Diverse Books,
Yes.
and that's the effort to publish more books about children who may not be Caucasian.
Right.
So anything, Native American, Asian, whatever.
Right.
Which is a terrific process. Do we need something like what's happened at the Academy, where they've just had to go through and look at all of their membership and look at all of their judges and open things up? Do we need that in the publishing industry?
I think for the publishing industry, it's a market issue. I think that there are communities who want to purchase books. And the sooner that the publishing industry really thinks about selling books to those communities, I think the better that they're going to do. It's like a mutually beneficial thing. I think Shonda Rhimes recently, or a while ago, did an interview where somebody said, why do you do colorblind casting? And she was just like, I'm not answering that, look at my ratings. There is a huge country full of, hundreds of millions of people, who really want to read both about other lives and their own lives.
Yeah, I know that Toni Morrison has been in a somewhat dispute recently about people who wonder why she doesn't write about white people. And she says, I'm writing for black people. But then some people would wonder, is that why she hasn't on her own right won an NBA award, but has won the Nobel and all of that?
Well, That's to the, I mean, I think the judges really have their own metrics for how they select. But I think that, that idea of, of how a book succeeds or why it succeeds, I think that it's really important to have people who are working in roles in sales and marketing and publicity, people who know how to sell the books. I think, I mean, obviously you need editors of color, you need editors who haven't necessarily gone to an Ivy League school, you need all sorts of people that reflect the country that we live in working in these roles. But I think that it's really important to think about the nonprofit administrators, to think about the folks who are selling the books, to think about booksellers at shops, to think about the publicity teams at any particular publisher that can think about creative ways to get a book. I was talking to somebody the other day and I was like, well, do you ever talk to hair salons when you're, do you ever send galleys to hair salons when you have a book that might speak to the Black audience?
Right.
Because there's just different ways that you think about it when you come from a community. And that's if it's an Asian American community that you're looking to target, if it's a Latino community that you're looking to target, an LGBTQ community.
Right.
You have to understand how those communities work. And if you don't understand, how do you sell?
So we're talking about the judges, and you've got 20 judges for this who've received all of these hundreds of books that they have to read between now and September. Bless you. But out of the 20, there are 4 who are Black. In fiction, we have T. Geronimo Johnson and Jesmyn Ward. In nonfiction, Melissa Harris Perry. And in poetry, Jericho Brown. So 4 out of 20, how do you feel about that ratio in terms, is that enough to make sure that Black books particularly get selected?
I don't know that we're trying to sort of jerry-rig the judging process to make sure that any particular type of book gets through. I think that we want judging panels that are reflective of multiple different things, in the community. We want above and beyond people who really understand literature. Right? We also want people who understand literature from all types of different perspectives, where they're publishing, what kind of work they're interested in, because you're measuring a huge volume of information, and you'll be looking at a memoir alongside a biography, alongside a collection of essays, alongside a small publisher, alongside something that's coming out of a major publisher. And I think that it's just alongside journalism. And you want people who can really understand the issues and the types of work that are presenting to them. And that's just nonfiction that I'm talking about. And so I don't know. I didn't put this panel together. I'm going to put together my first judging panel next year. But I like this.
We'll have you back and
see what I have to say then, right?
Right.
But I feel really good about this group of judges. I think that I think that they're going to have a lively debate. I think that they're going to come up. We're very outside of the judging process, so we don't sit in on their conversations. We don't monitor them. We kind of let them do their work. Very independently of us and the foundation. But I feel really good about the work that they will celebrate and support. But I don't necessarily think that we are constructing panels that are meant to be loaded in any one direction. And I think that it's really important for me, Black or not, to really make sure that there is a huge amount of objectivity that's going in when we're assessing what the National Book Award is being given to. So
Yeah, we just want to get to the point where when you have 16 there are more diverse, more than Black in the Asian, et cetera, panelists, judges, but we want to get to that feeling where loaded refers also to whites, it's loaded now with non-diverse people. So we're just looking for the point where it won't feel that way if there's more representation. Right. I'm putting you on the spot because you're new in the job.
No.
You're just starting out, and I'm trying to influence you so that the next time you come back, we can say, gosh, we just had a fabulous year for Black writers. They're all of the nominees are Black, so the finalists are Black. So one of the things I was just listening to the other day was a panel talking about writing workshops, people getting their MFAs and getting degrees in literature, et cetera, where there too the problem is that 95, if not 99% of the people doing the teaching Blacks are not included in that. It's not a diverse. So we again, as I say, shot through with non-inclusivity, which ultimately ends up in fewer books, fewer judges, fewer awards, And so we're looking to you to solving all of that, Lisa, in the next year.
I think that changing the playing field is the job. You know, it's like, again, that mission that we have, which is to celebrate the best literature in America, but also to enhance the cultural value of great writing in America. That, to me, that part of the mission, that work that happens outside, like 365 days of the year we're working, you know, that one day we award the awards, but all those rest of the days we're building readers. We are working in Texas, in California, in every state, hopefully one day, you know, to build readers who want to become professors, who want to become sales reps, who want to just go buy a book. And that's, for me, the job.
Yeah, so we always close, and I'm sorry, but we're going to have you back, you know, do a year-in evaluation. And I know you'll be so tremendously successful. I love what you've done already. But we always ask our guests to finish the statement. The strength, the power of Black America lies in...
I think it's our imagination. I think that if we can imagine ourselves in new roles and in a world that looks different than the one that it does look like right now, if we can think about how we appear in literature and on television, and I'm a cultural person, so I think about, you know, the role, I think about our lives through a cultural lens. And I think that the more we can imagine ourselves in a place that is more inclusive and equitable, I think the better off we'll be.
And do you see that in our near horizon?
I think that we're making strides. I think that the chorus of people who do not accept things being the way that they have been is growing louder. And I think that the work, especially in literature, that is coming out of this time is refusing to be enrolled in the lie. And I think that it's very encouraging to see all kinds of stories, all kinds of Blackness, all kinds of everything emerging on the cultural landscape. And it feels like the cultural world looks a lot more like the world that we really live in than it ever has.
Well, we thank you so much for that prediction and for being here today with us on Black America.
Thank you for
Lisa.
having me.
And thanks so much to you all out there too for joining us. We will see you the next time. I'm Carol Jenkins, and the program is Black America.